when you were arrested in Japan worth...
It was 23 days.
23 days. Only 23. That had to have been like a traumatic experience for you.
I mean, I'm sure there's some trauma there, but it wasn't. I felt like I was like in some weird prank show. The facts are, I was having a good day. I was looking up taco rice in the airport. I was thinking about the movie I was about to make there. And then all of a sudden, I'm being pulled into a back room. People like you who are like, are you traumatized? If I was, that trauma ended up being dulled by the sense of relief I had that I didn't have to respond to emails for a couple months.
Hello, I'm Kevin Fallon, and this is another episode of Obsessed, the podcast, where I guide you through all the TV shows, movies, and celebrity nonsense that we think is unmissable. And I've had a few great conversations this week. The first is with, I think, one of the most fascinating people in entertainment, Jeremy O. Harris. He is a writer, director, actor, playwright. I bet you he's also like a public notary. There's so many jobs this guy has. We chatted about so many things, including his new movie, RHOBH, which stars a person called Charlie XCX, one of the biggest pop stars in the world, in a really, really interesting performance. We get into that. We get into his recent, I'm not kidding, detainment in Japan. He has so many wild stories to tell. I can't wait for you to hear them. And then I get to talk to the very handsome men from E's digital series Hot Goss, Eyal and Lonnie Marts. Usually in their interviews, they are shirtless with nothing but a towel on, talking with some of pop culture's biggest newsmakers. Thankfully, they let me keep on my shirt because I don't want to hurt anybody's eyes. But we get into all the biggest drama happening right now. Summer House, Beverly Hills Housewives, The Bachelorette. We get into it all. But for now, here is my interview with Jeremy O. Harris. I'm here with our special guest today, Jeremy O. Harris, who is let's get into this. Playwright, screenwriter, director, fashion icon, provocateur. I feel like if we keep doing hyphens, we'll run out of hyphens in the world for your multi-hyphenate.
Oh my gosh. I think I'm just someone who is out too much. I'm a Gemini. That's what it is. Jeremy O. Harris, a Gemini. Yeah.
But I'm so glad to talk to you. You have a new movie coming out with Charlie XCX.
Yes.
It's called, and I've tried to rehearse this, and I'm sure I'm going to say it wrong, Arushka?
No, you're so close though. Erupsia.
Russia.
Erupsia.
Rupsia.
Yeah, it's way easier than you think.
It's a beautiful movie. I've watched a film, which is way simpler than just trying to pronounce it.
Thank you.
It's this beautiful European story about a person who wants to just find themselves, and you are sort of their access to that.
I think I'm the person who pops a bubble that leads them down a journey of a journey to recognition, right? I think that oftentimes there are those people in our lives who are sort of on the periphery who say one thing to you that wakes you out of your dream, and you're like, oh wait, what? And I think that that's what Claude does in this movie, which is quite fun.
It's a really sweet film. It's a great performance by Charlie XCX, by the way.
She's fabulous in it.
Yeah.
She's fabulous.
I remember I was at Sundance this year, and I felt like every freaking day I was going to a premiere, and lo and behold, Charlie XCX was in the movie. She has become pop star to movie star kind of person.
Yes. And I think it's so impressive because even while she was making this movie, she was still actively doing the remix album for Brat. This was made in the summer, Brat summer, that first summer in 2024 when everything was coming out, when people were just meeting the music, when Obama was tweeting about her, when Kamala Harris was tweeting about her. And it was really impressive that not only was she wearing a new hat, but she also hadn't stepped out of the pool of being a major musician, major producer in her own right. Which is, I think, a different way of being. Oftentimes when a pop star dons the helmet of, goes into the ring as an actor, they really say, I'm throwing away, my old version of myself and stuffing in here. And she said, no, I think I can do both at the same time. Which for me, the multi-hyphenate Gemini was, very impressive and very much the way in which I like to move.
And it was interesting, too, because what you're saying, sometimes you think a pop star being an actor is going to be some sort of gregarious, showy performance. This is very subtle.
Yeah.
She's doing in this. It's very nuanced acting that Charlie XCX is doing.
Yeah, I think that was a real, I introduced her to Pete, the director, 3 days before the the 360 music video came out. And they met at a bar in my neighborhood and were just like sort of going back and forth about both of their loves of movies. Like Charlie is a huge cinephile, and he mentioned that he was about to make a new movie in Poland. And she was like, oh my God, I'd love to make a movie like that, like the ways you make them, because he has this very specific, unique style, right? And he was like, well, if you want to do one, in August we start shooting. She said, August? I'm free in August. and,
Sure.
and we thought it was like, a 3 a.m. sort of like, yeah, I'd love to be in a movie, kind of like a toss away thing, nothing to take seriously. And a night, like, later that night, she DM'd him. She was like, so lovely to meet you with Jeremy. Pete, the director, just posted these DMs on his Instagram, which was very funny. And she was just like, by the way, I'm thinking for the movie in Poland, I don't want to be anything like Charlie. I think I want to be something new, something more muted, quiet, not the bitch like in the glasses that people imagine,
Right.
Yeah. And I think the person that she played is someone that's like actually closer to a Charlie I know. She's my neighbor too, and someone I've known since LA times. And she's like so gregarious and so warm and so generous. And I think that like she wanted to show that side of herself, and I'm really happy she did.
Does it ever get surreal to you that like you're just tossing the name Charlie XCX in this conversation? Like the fact that you in your career are now just working with pop stars who are at the height of their fame. Like we all had the Brat summer. Like
Yeah.
I had a Brat summer. I don't have any summer. I had a Brat summer. The fact that like you get to now work with these people, like does that ever become surreal to you?
I think there are people that it is surreal with. Like when Madonna called me and invited me to her house to talk about working on something with her, that was surreal, right?
Yeah.
Because that was,
What was that?
I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Anything she said, it doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter. She just said, "Come over," and a friendship was born out of that. Now that's very cozy and fun.
Yeah.
But watching someone that you've seen, sort of become famous, like talk to you or hang out with you, that doesn't feel surreal. That feels affirming that like that I've been on the right path, right? Like
Yeah.
when I went to Proof this weekend and saw Eyal starring in Proof, right across from Kara Young, who I also have known since she was doing readings at Yale. It was really affirming because this young actress who I met as a comedian when she was in Brooklyn with me, we met and we had coffee and we hung out. It was so amazing that like less than 7 years later, she's now like the face on the marquee of a Broadway show.
Yeah.
And it feels like the people that I've been able to encounter in this very short lifetime as an artist, the fact they've been so like outwardly and exuberantly celebrated feels like an affirmation that like, yes, like I made the right decision with my life. And the things that I see for myself or that I saw for myself, even if they haven't manifested yet, might one day manifest in the same sort of ways, in the same huge, exuberant ways, because I think that I've surrounded myself by a lot of good people. So I think that like that's what I don't know, when I see Charlie on the set of this movie in Poland, I'm not thinking she's a pop star. I'm thinking, wow, this girl who's been such a good person for so long is getting the flowers she deserves. And I'm so excited I get to be a part of more flowers coming her way.
Yeah. That's a really good way of looking at it. Like I came of age in this field with the Obsessed podcast, whatever, with Io and Quinta Brunson.
Yes.
And like seeing them become Hollywood power players in that time that I've been doing this has been like really, really encouraging.
Yeah.
I don't know the right way to put it, but like it's really nice to watch people that like who are your peers become really, really successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's a thing that like I think it was a thing that I read when I read Patti Smith's Just Kids that made me want to move to New York.
Amazing memoir.
It's a great memoir, but it's a memoir that's so much about like, not feeling that the successes of your friends make you smaller, but make you bigger, because it like their successes open you up to like the idea of success, the idea that more success could come your way.
Yeah.
And I think that like I've been able to foster a life that was in many ways modeled by that first reading of Just Kids as one of of abundance when you celebrate your friends and invite them to work with you as much as possible, right? Like invite them to dinner as much as possible, even. Like, you don't have to be like on set for a movie to be to grow with your friends. Like, I think
You soak in the energy.
you just soak it all in. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. So let's talk about success, because I first encountered you during the year where Slave Play was on Broadway, and I believe Daddy was also playing at the same time.
So Slave Play premiered off Broadway while Daddy was off Broadway as well.
Yes.
Yes, I was in my third year of grad school.
So you wrote both of those shows.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for giving me the gift of Coming Naked for a full act of a show, which happens in
Oh my
Daddy.
gosh.
That was amazing. But what I also remember from the time is Discourse.
Yes.
What is it like for a person who is writing things that they're passionate about, and then have it be public, and then all of a sudden everyone is debating it and talking about it and scrutinizing it and criticizing and then defending, and like all those different balls are being juggled. Like, what is it like to weather that as a person who's, I would imagine, just very proud for the fact that they even just got a play produced?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what was interesting was that I didn't know at the time that just because you invite discourse around your work, which is all I want to make discursive work. I think the best work is discursive. Just because you've invited a discursive space for your work does not mean that people want you to be a part of that discourse.
So they don't even want you to respond. They just want to have their opinion.
Yes. And I think that that was a lesson that I had to learn the hard way. And it was really quite curious, like, to experience this moment of having people, of like me thinking I could like retweet someone and say something funny about what they had said, and have someone say, "How dare you? How did he see this? This is so fucked up. Like, you have this many followers and I have this many. Like, this, you're punching down." And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to engage, but I guess my humor is not coming through in this way. And actually, maybe I should just shut the fuck up because no one cares,
Right.
Like, because I think, it's really hard to feel like online spaces had always felt like a room that I was in and able to talk to everyone else in that room. And there became a different point when it felt like, because I was making things that people were talking about in that room, the best place for me to be was like in a different room. And I didn't no one prepares you or lets you know that you've been invited into a different room, but people will tell you once you start talking in that room that they don't think you're supposed to be there anymore. And that was the most, I think, alienating part of it, is to feel like I had become some sort of like digital celebrity without my consent. Right? Like, yeah. I was still just a person in grad school who had written 2 plays.
I will say, like, from my end, as just a person who was online at that time, it seemed like you were eager to be part of the discourse, which maybe you weren't.
Well, I was eager to talk to people, but I don't think that I saw myself as like a foreign radical in the discourse about something I had made. I thought that there would be like a welcome thing completely. And it was sometimes, but it often wasn't, right? Because people do like to have their own private thoughts about a thing. That's why people have so many, avatars that aren't their face, and like, have a pseudonym online, because they want to be able to say like the really brutally honest thing without feeling there's going to be a spotlight put on them for having said it.
Right.
And I think that like, I didn't, because I had never had a fake avatar.
It's always been you.
It's always been me. I didn't think that there was anything wrong with me responding, but there kind of was. And it was like wrong for my own psyche as well, right? Like, I think that like something you start to learn as you get older and in a public sphere is like, oh yeah, there's like a lot of times you don't really need to like open the app. You don't need to say anything. Just like let it be, you know? And let that do the work in and of itself, right? And maybe witness some of it, but like you don't have to witness all of it. And as a Gemini, double Gemini, that's really hard sometimes.
And I would imagine too, because like those plays happened at the same time, you became a public figure because of that. Like, I watched you in Fashion Week, and you were on Emily in Paris, and like everything happened all at once.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what that is like, to like just be a person who has interesting ideas and writes them in a play. And then all of a sudden you are a person who's on display for everyone to criticize.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was in many ways it felt like a sort of like the closest. It felt like I had been invited into a even a rarer spot of being a playwright or an artist when I was asked to be a public figure in a way, because that it did telegraph to me that maybe there was a bit more job security than I thought, right? Because people can decide to do your plays one day and decide not to the next week, you know?
Right.
And the thing that that can protect you in a system that is so ready to discard is having other places to be, right? Like, it's like, oh great, if no one's producing my play this year, then like I know I'll be on another season of Emily in Paris.
Yeah.
Or I know that, like, you know, the fashion world is excited about my ideas to do X, Y, or Z. And, you know, I don't know. And I think that, like, there was something at first that was really scary about it, where I was like, are people going to take me less seriously if I say yes to all these other things that I'm interested in? And another part of me that said, like, who cares if they take me less seriously? Because, like,
that's a good idea. Who cares?
Who cares? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, like, no one's going to care when I'm gone either, right? Like, you know, except for me. And so if I look back on if I look back on my life and say, like, oh, why didn't I do that thing? That would have been really fun. Why didn't I get on that, take that trip or do that thing or try to fail in a different field? I would have been really upset with myself. So I said, fuck it, who cares? And did what I needed to do. And I do think that it's like helped me have a richer career than I think I would have had otherwise. Because I do think that, like, when you decide to do work that makes people feel a lot of things, that riles people up, which is the kind of work I've always been attracted to, you do put yourself in a hot seat or under in like a what do you call it? Like under the scope of someone who might say, like, this guy's opinions are too much. Like, audiences don't want to talk that much. People want something that's going to make them happy. People want something that's going to, you know, not ask them to think. So let's not do his work right now. And I think that because I'm so public, it's made it harder for my work not to be done. You know?
Well, the Tony Award voters will dispute that because they love thinking about that show.
Well, you know, it is what it is.
But I also love, like, thinking about, like, I'm too busy right now. I might just, like, do my little side hustle of starring on Emily in Paris.
Well, it's also that, like, those things. I mean, I started out as an actor first, right? So, like, being an actor was, like, actually my first passion, and I started writing because I didn't think that there were enough roles for people that looked like me, right? There weren't as many. Like, you know, the play where Alan Cumming is, like, sitting by that pool. He's sitting by that pool opposite a young black man who's on stage the entire time.
Yeah.
A young black man who gets to be the ingenue in a story that is shaped like a melodrama from the 19th century. Up until that point, I had read a bunch of melodramas from the 19th century that I love, and the suffering body at the center of them never looked like me. And I wanted something like that. You know, I wanted to have a role like the role of Gary, or even, like, you know, the ability to do a monologue like the monologue Kanisha has, or to see my girlfriends get to do that monologue and, like, play in that way. It felt unfair to me that, like, if I were to ever want to work in a way that was transgressive, I might have to, like, you know, abandon my personhood and, like, don a full new identity or fit myself into an identity that wasn't shaped for me, right? Like, if I wanted to be in a Sarah Kane play and work in that mode, if I wanted to be in an Ibsen play and work in that mode, I'd have to imagine that I was some Brit. I'd have to imagine that I was some, like, you know, Scandinavian person or someone of that lineage. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the specificities of my black gay body didn't really fit there.
So what you're saying is so beautiful and altruistic. But I'm curious, what is it like for you to actually produce that content that you were yearning for and then have it be controversial? Because, like, and everything you're saying right now, I'm like, yes, like, any person would want to have that. That should be an experience for any person who experiences art.
Yeah.
And for you to actually create that art and then have that be something scandalous.
Yeah.
Like, what is that like?
I mean, I think that, like, that was the scandal doesn't bother me, right? Nothing about a scandal bothers me because my favorite work was scandalize people. A Doll's House scandalized people when it came out. People were like, "How dare she walk out of the door and like leave her kids behind?" Right? Like, Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death was a musical on Broadway that scandalized people, black and white, when they said, "How dare you put all of the ghetto on stage in a musical?" You know, you look back at like Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes, these people that we like read about in school as like these sort of like museum pieces of black excellence. And yet at the time, black people and white people were disgusted by what they wrote. Black people said like to Zora Neale Hurston, "How dare you write in a white publication that black people talk like this," right? Langston Hughes was was a gay man in Harlem who was told that his queerness was a problem. I mean, there's a reason why James Baldwin's work is only remembered and adapted from the lens of his activism and very rarely from the lens of his queerness, right? Like, people have to keep pushing the fact that he's queer up a mountain, and people keep forgetting because we only want to think of Baldwin as like this great activist and not someone who had a libido and was like, you know,
God forbid.
Exactly. And so I think that like that the controversy didn't bother me. I think that like what did bother me and what continues to bother me is the amount of people who find it noble to demand that black people have no complication, that black people be noble at all times, because I don't think that that makes us human. And there's a great quote from, I believe her name is Kathleen Collins. Hold on, I'm gonna find it.
Yeah.
Where she talks about this, and I literally saw this earlier today, and I was like, "Oh my God, I love this so much." Why is it that this is a statement that I wasn't given access to as a young maker? Kathleen Collins said it in 1984 here.
And I think it's a danger that maybe we're just beginning to come to grips with. The danger is that we must now be too good. You see, if you've been too evil, if you've been the notion of sin incarnated, and you're now trying to correct that balance, what do? You make black people into saints. You go from being a sinner to being a saint. Neither one is true. Neither one has anything to do with reality. Both are traps to dehumanize you. Both.
And that's a trap that black people, white people, brown people, all sorts of people get it.
Queer people.
Yeah, queer people. Yeah. We all fall into that. And I think that like I am really attracted in general to making things that might upset people, to making things that have people question themselves, but also I do that not to cause harm, but only to show the like wildly different fabrics of humanity, and to also give actors who are people, right, who have been put on this earth to do a job, the chance to stretch themselves to do every part of that job that's available to them, to be as complicated as their imaginations can allow them to be, because otherwise they're doing really boring work.
It's also like the point of all of this is to watch a piece of art and leave afterwards and spend 2 hours talking with your friends about what you just saw.
Yes.
Debating it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What was controversial? What was offensive? Like, all that kind of stuff is supposed to be part of this. And I think that in the social media discourse age, that conversation is now just like siphoned into being problematic.
Yes. And also there are
just being like the conversation, which we should be having about this stuff.
Yeah. And I also think that like there are a lot of people who get given grace culturally to like make complicated figures in art. And a lot of those people don't look like me, right? Yeah. And I do think that like it's quite frustrating to see over and over and over again white men get the chance to like make bad characters, right? To write people who do horrible things. And all of the grace and joy that comes from them writing characters that do these things is not often afforded to women or people of color or queer people. And I think I'm going to continue to demand that I get that same grace for the rest of my career.
And one of the things that I love about you is that you do demand that, and you are yourself always. Um, you are responsible for, I think, was probably my favorite celebrity moment of the year, which is you were at the Vanity Fair Oscar party, and you saw Sam Altman, and you told him your piece. You called him Goebbels, right?
Well, I said to him a lot of things, but one of the things I said to him was like, when you look back in history at this moment, like who do you want to be? Do you want to be looked back in history? And this looks right now, it looks like you're standing next to the Nazis, right? Like
Yeah.
you look like a person who, if history were writing the story, would be the Goebbels or the, like obviously now I've corrected it to Frick.
So that's what they like. This is why I love you so much. Like you were in the tabloids for saying that on the first night, and then the next day you were like, "Oh, sorry, I was probably drunk that night. What I meant to say was he's Project Flick."
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was
You were like, you doubled down on it the next day. You weren't like, "I'm sorry, like I was misspoken." Like you're like, "No, I misspoke when I was at that party. What I meant to say was actually this more specific version of why this man is a nightmare."
Yeah, I think it's really dangerous to allow ourselves to bring politeness to the fore of our concerns when dealing with people who are actively making the lives of millions of people worse every day,
Yeah.
just because we happen to be sharing space with them. I think the fact that we're sharing space with them gives us the opportunity to perhaps shift the trajectory of their lives by actually saying to them the thing that no one else around them would say.
But the difference is like you're at a party where everyone else at that party is trying to just like rub elbows and make nice, but you actually said something, which is transgressive.
Well, I was there. I was at this party, and Jane Fonda was walking by me. Right, Jane Fonda has never held her tongue before. Right, and she was such a model for someone who was fearless. Right, I think that it's our duty as young people to not allow that level of transgression or that demand of our fellow man disappear because social media has deadened our ability to look people in the eye and say what we feel.
Yeah.
I believe very strongly that my power comes more so from my voice than whatever I might post on my Instagram. And I think that I know people who have a very different relationship to that. And again, some people's Instagrams are quite powerful. They've done things on them that have shifted things, right? I think that you look at some things like the Arab Spring in general and a collective of people on social media change things.
So I think a lot of celebrities or public figures are reticent to say things like what you said to Tim Altman because they're afraid of their careers being constricted because of that.
Sam Altman is going to make all of our careers a lot worse if he and Dario at Claude and, the litany of other people working hand in hand with the government and Hollywood power brokers to erode any sense of humanity from the arts that we make.
Yeah.
If they win, then we won't have a career to protect.
But how do you get to a point where again, because so basically the majority of all other people are so hesitant to speak up the way that you do. What do you think is the thing about you that made you feel okay being outspoken?
I'm not afraid of not being invited back. I'm just
Really?
not.
You're not.
No. I
So
think
if all this ends tomorrow, you're okay with that?
I talk to my fiance about this all the time. I've done things that so few people in the world have done. I've been to the Met Gala multiple times. I was on the host committee last year. That was a childhood dream. It was so special and so fun. I got to wear my little Prince costume and walk around like a true person who was in the court. I had a major film come out that I wrote that was really special and amazing. I got to do it with one of my best friends. I've been on Broadway. My play got nominated for 12 Tonys. I've since produced multiple other plays that have gone on to be Tony nominated, one of which, The Sign in Sidney Brustein's Window, was written by a Black woman in the 60s and was never produced on Broadway and gotten the highest honor and the time that I was a part of the producing team. It did. These are things that have affirmed me to no end. So if I were relegated to being a high school drama teacher after this, I would be fine.
What do you think would happen if everyone in the industry had that same mindset that you have.
I don't think it's just like
if everyone was just like, I'm going to say what I want to say because this is my moment to do it, what would change?
I think a lot would change, but I think it isn't just in our industry. I think it's also like our politicians. I think that's one of the reasons why people are so excited by someone like Mamdani, right? It's because Mamdani says what he actually thinks. And like seemingly, right, and this might change because he is still a politician and we cannot like treat politicians like they are like some infallible gods, but like seemingly it is working out for him to say the things that he feels are important and that his community feels are important, and to not shy away from them because of fear of reprisal or fear of like losing it all, right? Like in a lot of ways, his stance on so many issues in America, but like specifically like taxing billionaires or Gaza should have meant that in New York City he wasn't going to be the mayor or let alone the youngest mayor, and he was, right? And it's worked out for him, and I think that like there is a new generation of people who are learning that like we have 30 minutes. Like, do you know that meme? Like, you have 30 minutes. We all have 30 minutes before like we all fall off a cliff. So either we each use our power in whatever room we are in to speak up now, or you have to just burn up in the flames, I think that like when Trump decided to like not quote unquote like, take Iran back to the Stone Age, that only happened because like people got scared enough for once to actually say out loud, like, we need to do something. And that was across the board. That was that was Republicans and Democrats were like, wait a second, this is fucking crazy. I think they need to have that fear a lot more. That fear needs to come into every aspect of our life. Because I look around, the reason I'm a part of this movie is because I look around at so many people that are some of the like most dynamic young thinkers, makers, artists of our generation who are stuck in development hell, who are being told like, oh, you have to wait until we get a star that's big enough. You have to wait till we can get this, before they can make anything.
You put IP on this in some way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pete Oz is a director who is saying, I don't need more than $100,000 to make this movie. I have my camera and I have all the tools with me with just this thing. Can we find enough people to help us raise $60,000, $70,000 to do this thing? And that becomes a real tangible thing that I can do to keep art happening for someone I think is one of the most dynamic, independent voices I know. I'm like, great, I can go to this door, that door, this door, that door, this door, ask for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, and cobble it together, right? With the help of Luke and Josh, our other producers on this movie, we did that, right? We got the money that we needed.
Such a beautiful movie.
Thank you.
So like,
but like this movie is also me saying fuck you to like the entire system that is like, I think pushing out the American independent spirit in order to welcome in like a homogenized corporate one that like is dulling what made America so special in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
I looked around at I was talking to Jordan Tannehill, the playwright who wrote Prince Faggot, the play that I produced, a play that, again, no one wanted to produce. For the 6 years I was trying to raise money for it.
The conversations we had in this office of how to put the headline on that article when we reviewed that, because it's, again, transgressive. Like, we are still, like, in the Stone Age of, like, how do we put a headline on Prince Faggot review?
Yes. How do you? That's a fun challenge for a newsroom to have.
Yeah.
That was one small reason why I was excited about doing that play, outside of the fact that it was so beautifully rendered and so wonderfully written. But, I looked to him and I was like, it took us 6 years to make this play. Do you know what would have happened if we were in a braver landscape where, because this play just got 6 Lortel nominations, the most Lortel nominated play of the season.
By the way.
Thank you. That's Jordan. That's Misha. That's our cast, right? That's so many of the amazing partners that showed up. But if it hadn't taken 6 years for that play to happen, how many plays could Jordan have written in that time, right? Like, you look at the 70s and the 60s. There are no playwrights of the boomer generation who are like significant voices who don't have like 5 to 12 scripts that like were produced within like a 15-year period.
Yeah.
And I look around at my generation of playwrights, and most of us have had 2 or 3 plays up in New York City before the time we were 40. And
That's amazing.
It's not. I actually think that I think that
okay, interesting.
I think that we have there needs to be a lot more bravery and a lot more funding for like the dynamic voices that need to be populating our stages and telling these stories that our communities need right now. And I think that like because there's so much fear, there's not like a real development of voices that is happening, and because it's so it's so unaffordable to like to live here, making things has become deeply unaffordable.
Are you writing right now in this moment?
Am I writing?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm writing like crazy.
Yeah.
And again, all those playwrights who had 2 or 3 plays by the time they're 40, they have 8 to 12 in their inbox or in their Dropbox, in their cloud, waiting for someone to say yes to, right? We're in a crisis moment. We're in a real crisis moment for the arts, for like, you know, education, for people having their bellies fed, for in every way. And I think we just need more people to scream and shout, and maybe something will happen. God, I just ranted.
And here's the thing. I am so passionate about everything you're talking about that I feel so stupid now that I have to ask the one like SEO question, which is about your Japan arrest. I just want to talk to you about creating art forever. But you just wrote this, and I will say, one of the most like beautiful pieces of writing that I've seen.
Well, thank you.
At Vanity Fair, documenting your time when you were arrested in Japan for 35 days.
No, 23. It was 23 days.
23 days. Only 23. Yeah. No big deal. But like, I can't imagine, again, talk about this like idea of being now a public figure, like being a person who that happens to, B, knowing that's going to become a public story, and then C, trying to like articulate it in your own voice, the way that you did in the Vanity Fair piece. Like, how do you navigate that? Because that had to have been like a traumatic experience for you, I'm sure.
I mean, I'm sure there's some trauma there, but it wasn't. Like it no, I mean,
in my mind, like that's my biggest fear.
No, I mean, I think it would have been my biggest fear before it happened too. I think that like it would have been a bigger fear had I done something on purpose or done something. If I had been actually trying to break the law, I think I would have felt some guilt or shame.
Yeah.
For me, it was like this is like I felt like I was like in some weird prank show or something. I was like, wait, this is gonna
right now?
Yeah. And what was really great about the essay is that like it's an essay that's not really about my experience of the entire time. It's like so that gets to still be private in a way. It's about like the moment, right? The moment when it was found and like the days after I left. And I think that like that made it very easy to like sort of articulate, because I was like, what are the facts of what happened? The facts are I was having a good day. I was looking up taco rice in the airport and being like, what are going to be the best taco rice restaurants? I was thinking about the movie I was about to make there. And then all of a sudden I'm being pulled into a back room, you know? And I think the thing that I wanted to express the most was that like, I wanted to answer the question that people had, people like you who are like, are you traumatized? I wanted to say, perhaps if I was, that trauma ended up like being dulled by the sense of relief I had that I didn't have to respond to emails for a couple months.
The structure of that article where you basically wrote it like as a diary.
Yeah.
Was really good to telegraph what you're just saying. Like maybe it wasn't trauma. It was like, this is what just happened to me.
Yes. And it was also like this thing where I was like, I want people to know that like I wanted to tell people, answer the question that my phone, if you go through my like unread text messages right now, there's still so many that I've never answered from that time.
Oh, geez.
Like they're just like, these are all the unread.
Oh my God, there's so many unread.
Yeah. And I just like, because I was just like, there were so many people who reached out and sent with like, sent with so much like love and care. But I also was just like, I'm too overwhelmed right now, truly, to respond to all of you. So I would answer your most burning question. What happened and am I okay? And it was like, here's what happened. And actually, I'm really okay. My skin got better. I got skinnier. I read a lot more. I realized how addicted I am personally to my phone.
Yeah.
And I now know that I can like, you know, step outside of the world that I'm living and slow down in a way that I don't think I knew before. I think that the thing that connects to the way this conversation started is that I no one prepares anyone to be known, but you definitely don't get prepared for that when you're put on a rocket ship right out of grad school, right? I was a third year and I had 2 plays premiere off Broadway. Before I even graduated, I was being told I was probably going to go to Broadway the next season. I started school basically homeless and was leaving school with a flight to London to interview Rihanna for the cover of T Magazine, which when I flew back to do my first week of rehearsals for my thesis show, the last week of which was interrupted by me going to the Met Gala. And then I graduate school, I take my play to Broadway, and I have not stopped since then.
Yeah.
So the first time that like my life really had to slow down was those 23 days.
Oh, interesting.
And it was this real a moment of me like sort of like looking at the textures of my life, everything that had happened, and really having to take stock of each and every one of them to realize how many ways in 6 years I've had to alienate myself from like certain histories of my of the life I've lived in order to navigate rooms where the CEO of OpenAI and the CEO of fucking Amazon are standing within 10 feet of me, right? Like, how does a little boy from
also to know to like say something in those spaces.
Totally, but also like I think that like the thing that's really crazy is that a boy from Martinsville, Virginia, like a very small town in Virginia, with a single mom, came from nothing and ended up there in a very short lifespan. That's something that like does require you to have some real meditation, some real time to sit. And I think that's what I wanted to express to people in a small way in this little essay in Vanity Fair. And I'm so grateful to Mart for giving me the platform to do that. Is that like I got to actually slow down, and for me, I'm very grateful for that. So if there was some divine intervention that came through and like shook something out of the cosmos and into my toiletry bag, I'm grateful to them.
Yeah. Well, we at Obsessed the Podcast here, we're very grateful that you told us all about this. It's been so inspiring to hear about your process and all the things in your life that motivated you to be who you are, which is like a great cultural like provocateur. Like you're just like you're the best.
Oh,
thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Hi, Lonnie. Hi, Eyal. How are you?
How's it going? We're doing absolutely fantastic. Great to see you.
You too. It's going great over here. I'm grateful to be talking to you both with my shirt on, because otherwise I would be horribly humiliated by what I look like compared to you two.
The shirt's off is that you immediately drop the boundaries. You immediately get to know each other very, very well.
But I will tell you, we're grateful to be talking to you with our shirts on as well.
Yeah.
Because people think we just exist topless.
And they don't know sometimes they don't know our faces. They're like, oh, wait, who? I feel like I know you guys from somewhere. I'm like, oh, you're usually staring at this chunk of our bodies.
You just pull up your shirt and like, oh yeah, now I get it.
Right. I know those.
Yeah.
I've seen those. Plenty. Oh, guys, hey, you know.
I mean, that has to be such an interesting way of getting to know people, to be interviewing them in that exposed kind of format.
I think I'm glad that we get to be, we've gotten used to being topless, that it feels pretty normal for us. And I forget that when people come to us, they're like, do we have to take off our shirts? And we're like, no, but wouldn't you want to? Like, we always wear clothes in society. This is just so much more fun.
You know what? I think the day we get asked to not take our tops off will be a sad day now. But what I will say about the interview process, which I think is interesting, and one of our guests actually brought it up recently, they said that it creates this element of like vulnerability where people, because you're already in a more vulnerable state with less clothes on, it actually opens up the conversation for maybe deeper, more vulnerable conversations, because they're already kind of exposed. And so whilst Hot Goss is, you know, fun and lighthearted and it's all about entertainment and interviewing people at where they're at today, there's always this kind of undertone of vulnerability where we're able to ask questions because people feel a little bit safer and maybe more exposed.
We're all exposed. So it's like, you know what, I can share the goss. I can share a little something. And honestly, Eyal does a great job of earnestly asking people good questions, and I like to just poke and prod people. So it's usually a fun dynamic.
That's a great combination. I want us to actually get to some of the hot goss, because my head is reeling and hasn't stopped reeling for the last few weeks over every single development that's been happening with all this summer house drama. Like every time I think that it has reached its craziest point, something else happens. Like this weekend, West and Amanda are spotted together at the Yankees game, and in one clip you see them kissing, in the next clip you see her nagging him, and people are reading signs into all of it. What was your reaction to this summer house bombshell that exploded these past few weeks?
Personally, I felt bad for Sierra because I'm like, first of all, there's a couple of things, but the main thing I'll talk on is like having your ex and your best friend hook up without seemingly telling you. Hookup is bad enough. Continued relationship, also even worse. But I mean, on one hand, it's nice that the internet is kind of the general consensus seems to be on her side, which is nice. But I mean, psychologically, it's like, damn, that's tragic. And to keep it going, I don't know if they talked to her at all, but I'm like, that's just devastating.
It's a tough pill to swallow, right? And I like to play devil's advocate here, okay? Lonnie doesn't
Listen to
like
this, Kevin.
that I did. No, the whole situation is completely messed up, right? And the way that they've gone about it is just so wrong. But I do think that when you fall in love with someone, you fall in love. And if the love is undeniable, then the love is undeniable. I think the way that you approach the situation and handle it with communication and honesty and addressing the people that need to be involved so that they find out from you and not the, paps and
Instagram story.
Instagram stories. I think that's where this situation is disrespectful and wrong. It's not ideal in any sense of the word, right? But it happens in life. We've heard it a million times over. I think the problem is the disrespect and the way that they've gone about it and the blaseness of, oh, we don't need to worry, when actually somebody else's feelings are involved that has a connection to both people, and they could have been respectful enough to have gone to her and said, hey, listen, we can't deny our feelings. This is how we feel. It's unlucky and we wish it wasn't the case, but it is. We're going to pursue this and would like your kind of blessing. That for me would have obviously mitigated all of this, but clearly there might not be good people.
And that's where I'm at too, because at first I felt a little bit bad for West and Amanda, because I was trying to imagine a situation where, like, sometimes friends, when they've known each other for a long time and someone's going through something, their emotions, maybe there's alcohol involved, who knows, you start hooking up. And that's something that happens in life with a lot of friend groups. And they, because of the fact that they were reality stars and because of the fact that there was already so much attention being put on both West's relationship with Sierra and Amanda's separation from her husband, Kyle Cook, they were forced to give a public statement confirming the fact that they were sort of in a relationship, sort of dating, and having to make this all a very public thing. I was like, that kind of sucks to have to accelerate to that point in something that could have just been a normal dalliance. But then they just started rubbing in everyone's face, like you were saying, like the being out every night in New York City and people taking photos of them and going to the Yankees game and being on TV. That's a different level.
On the screen, and it's so public, and it's like, you could have kept this quiet. And I don't know. If those were my friends, I'd be like, no, they're not.
I think this is where the whole reality TV stars, fame hungry, kind of love the drama, sadly comes into play, And
at least make an appearance there for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of, where when you can do things behind closed doors and navigate things in a way that people don't really see, or you choose when you're in the public eye, or you choose to step outside, and let the people see. And they had two ways of going about it, and clearly they chose the very public route with more disrespect, and therefore people are entitled to have their strong opinions because they've
made a strong choice,
and they weren't respectful in the way that they moved.
And I don't know if both of you are watching this season of Summer House, but since the scandal broke, watching the episodes that have been airing the last few weeks has been really, really interesting. You can now sort of like play Harry the spy and like start seeing clues and maybe this would happen. Like I remember there was one episode several weeks ago where Sierra says you can tell that Wes likes someone when he sits on you. And then the very next episode that aired after the scandal broke, you see Wes sitting on Amanda.
No way. I haven't been watching it, but I think once you're given that piece of information, you can see these social cues and you can see it's kind of, yeah, these micro kind of emotions, and all of a sudden you start to either we're kind of creating this fantasy dynamic in our mind, or we start to see those little micro moments that actually are like, oh, if this is what we were looking for, then we could have predicted it. But nobody was looking for it because nobody thought two people would be so conniving and do it in this kind of way.
Also, Kevin, if you were Wes, what would you be doing?
I mean, I think, is living his best life right now. He's a single guy who's clearly been holding a torch for this girl for a while and now is getting what he wanted and he's getting more fame from it. Like, I don't think he cares about negative fame. I think he just cares about attention.
Sure.
And that's what's been really interesting to me about this too, is that the hero in all of this ends up being, well, first of all, Sierra, the goddess. Of course, Sierra is coming off really well in all of this. But Kyle Cook, who, if you've been watching Summer House this season, has been the biggest villain, has had such a horrible season, has been so, his behavior to his wife has been awful. And now, because of all of this, the tide has totally turned on him, and he is coming out as some sort of like hero golden boy in all of this.
Right.
It's
Good thing he got
wild.
away from it all, type of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Speaking of villains, the one other thing I wanted to pick your brains about, because it's just fascinating me all season. It's on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, is Dorit Kemsley's behavior this season. She has sort of, in the way that I was just talking about with Wes, sort of like seized this idea of being nasty as being sort of like badass fun entertainment, and has just sort of gone scorched earth on every single one of her friends, Kyle Richards and Erica Jane, and just like, instead of owning up to it or trying to make amends, just like sort of walks off in the distance smoking and thinking that she's chic and fabulous for doing that. What is your take on that as a sort of reality TV strategy?
I look, so I've done one reality TV show, obviously around the reality TV network a lot. I haven't been keeping up with Real Housewives religiously. As far as I understand the drama that we have seen unfolded through it, like I feel like that if you're okay with losing friends in this space, because it seems like they had been good friends for a while and there was a breach of confidence, and now she's like, you know what, bump all of you guys. And if you're okay with burning like scorched earth, like you said, like that, then sure, it'd make for great TV. But I'm like, to live like that feels like a long, hard road on a solo journey. And I feel like unless she's like leaving after this season, which I don't see that happening, you have to live with that and come back and continue to interact with these people, your friend, so to speak.
I I think there's always a moment on reality shows that go the distance and have seasons after seasons where we kind of find the same characters on these shows. And I think there's a couple of things that can happen. Either they feel like they are being pushed out by new characters, new people, and in order to kind of reignite the hype and the fame and their character, they have to start, coming in and, like a bull in a china shop, and just going crazy in order to reinstate the fact that, look, I'm here and this is about me, and ego gets into play and everyone wants to make sure that they've got the headlines and they're being talked about. And I think sometimes these shows can get to people's heads, and you're in this pressure cooker environment, and all of us, reality is all about drama, right? And we wouldn't watch it if it wasn't there. And when you realize that and you're making a career out of it, sometimes you lose your moral compass because you're just trying to make good TV, and you forget that you're not acting. This is reality, and this is the real world, and there are real consequences, and your behavior has actions. I think the lateness idea where this argument has also kind of stemmed from is, look, I'm a sucker for being on time for things that are important, and everyone has things to do and a busy life, and time is precious, right? It's the one thing we can't buy. It's the one thing we can't get back. And it is disrespectful when you continue to be late to things and other people are made to wait around. It's as if you people think that they are better than you, therefore you should just wait on and be on their time. And so, I everyone can be late every now and again. Hold your hands up. Sorry, you were in traffic, whatever. I don't know.
Talking to my kids.
Exactly. Like, but a continued lateness is kind of rude and disrespectful, and eventually it has to be called out because ultimately either show up on time or don't show up, and we're going to keep on going.
Yeah. And I think what's been interesting is the reaction to her behavior, when she's, both the lateness thing and also just her sort of attacking her so-called friends. The people are reacting not so much with like anger or hurt. It's just like bafflement. Like you were saying, like she's unrecognizable to them as a person that they had known for years and years. The outbursts and stuff, they're just like, who are you? What are you doing? Like, why is this happening?
Yeah, almost like this is somebody that we don't recognize. We've been watching you for so long, and we believe we knew who you were, and now you're showing us a side that we're so unfamiliar with. Is this you, or are you trying to be something you're not? I will say that there's a lot that everyone has a personal life, and it doesn't mean that it's okay to behave in that way, but who knows what's going on in the bigger picture and the bigger world. And obviously then you walk onto the show and you're yeah, you're losing it.
Kevin, what do you think happened?
I think that it's a combination of, she legitimately has things going on in her life that have burnt her out, and she's at her wit's end. But I also think that she saw the attention. She did a little bit of this last season and got a lot of really great attention for it. There were people who were like, oh, this side of you is kind of fabulous. And she just dialed that up past 10 to 11, 12, 13. And now it's too much. And people have turned on her.
I think that's the danger, right? You give an element of what people want to see, and you start to stand up for yourself in situations that make sense. But then you see the accolades that you're getting from the public, and, oh, we love this, good for you. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to continue to do that because people like it. And then you start creating drama and arguments out of thin air because you think that's what people want to see, when actually they just want to see a rounded version of yourself, the vulnerability, the person that can stand up for themselves. It would be much better if she came in and maybe was more vulnerable about what's going on in her life and said that she's struggling and looking for support, other than instead of maybe projecting and causing arguments.
Yeah. The before I let you guys go, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about, because I know that you've interviewed on Hot Goss a lot of people from Bachelor Nation, from the Bachelor and the Bachelorette franchise. What is your? Do you think it was the right move to have canceled this season, The Bachelorette?
Yes, I do. Whilst all the information is still being gathered, and it's not factual until there's been real decisions made, I think production and companies and networks have a duty of care to protect everybody involved and not give people platforms until they
have been exonerated, so to speak, from capacity.
Yes, exactly. And just sure of who they're giving a platform to, because with fame and success comes influence, and with influence, you have people that admire and aspire to be like. And I think it's, especially in the world that we live in.
I think personally, as a content creator, like online, any kind of, and we mentioned it earlier, like in reality TV, there's such a world in which any kind of press and PR is good press, so to speak, as long as more people are watching, more eyes are watching. That's great for ratings and audiences, as much as we are like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is terrible. People love something they can't stop talking about, right? But I do believe that it is the right choice as of this moment right now to not put out that season and to just benefit and profit off of like pretty terrible situation, because that's one of the reasons everybody would be watching and tuning in, right? To see like, ooh, what was going on at the time? This was all happening in the same time, and this and that and the other. So I think it is responsible to not put out the season right now. I think at some point, I think we both know that something will probably try to make light or, get seen at some point. They could put out the season sometime down the line. But I think as of right now, as there's something so serious being dealt with, I think it's the right thing to not put it out. And I also, just knowing people, knowing the industry and knowing audiences, I think at some point down the line, people are going to want to see what went down on this season.
There's no doubt that somewhere in some future, the footage in the season will be used. How it is going to be shared and used depends on the outcome. But I don't think it's gone forever. So, yeah.
Well, listen, it's been a blast to pick your brains about all these reality TV, all this reality TV nonsense that I can't stop thinking about. So it's been a lot of fun to get your perspective on this. And I can't wait to see you both again. I guess next time will be Shirtless when I watch you on Hot Goss.
You got to come in the sauna.
Yeah, maybe you'll join us in the sauna.
We'll see. I'll have to start working out first, but I'll accept the invitation.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Wow. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Eyal. Thank you, Lonnie. This was such a great episode. What did you think? Are you a big Charlie XCX fan? Are you excited to see her in another film performance? Let us know. We love to hear from you. And as always, subscribe to us on YouTube at the Obsessed channel. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like me, please subscribe to me at my Substack at obsessed.substack.com. Thank you to our producers, Devin Rogerino and Rachel Passer, and I'll see you next time.